AITA for refusing to drink something my wife and her brother secretly prepared for me. I'm Brian, 38, and by the time this happened, I'd been Lila's husband for 7 years. I was the kind of husband who remembered that her mother hated onions in her takeout, kept spare batteries in the junk drawer, and quietly replaced the paper towel roll instead of balancing a new one on top of the empty tube. At family dinners, I usually let the louder people talk. When something bothered me, I waited until we were alone to bring it up. For years, I believed that was maturity. Eventually, I understood that Lila had started treating my silence like a resource she owned. When we first got married, she was warm in a way that made people relax around her. She remembered birthdays, sent thank you cards, and could make an uncomfortable room feel normal with one joke. I love that about her. I still think some of it was real. But over time, I noticed that her gentleness worked differently depending on who was in front of her. If a friend was upset, Lila listened. If her mother was upset, Lila reassured her. If her younger brother Derek was upset, Lila fixed the problem for him. If I was upset, she lowered her voice, tilted her head, and asked why I was coming at her so aggressively. It was a useful trick because she never had to shout. She could make me look unreasonable just by staying soft while refusing to answer. Derek was 33 and had been drifting through our marriage like a third person with no responsibilities. At first, the problems were small enough to dismiss. He borrowed my car for an afternoon and brought it back after midnight with the gas light on. "Sorry, man," he said, tossing the key onto the counter. "Crazy day." Lila handed me the key before I could answer. "He forgot," she said. "Don't make it a whole thing." A few months later, he asked for $200 because his paycheck was late. Then it became $300 for a repair. Then $150 because he had messed up the dates on a bill. The transfers came from our shared checking account. Lila labeled them temporary help. None of them came back. When I mentioned the total one night, she stared at me like I had added up the cost of oxygen. "He's family, Brian." "So am I." "That's not what I meant." "I know. That's the problem." She didn't speak to me for the rest of the evening. The next day, she told Ruth, her mother, that I was obsessing over money and making her feel watched. I found out because Ruth called me. "Marriage is not an audit," she said. I asked why almost $1,000 left our account without a conversation. There was a pause. Lila said it was much less than that. "I have the statements." Ruth sighed like the statements were a personality flaw. Derek has always needed more support than other people. That sentence explained the entire family. Derek learned early that if he made a mess, someone else would be criticized for noticing it. He started dropping by without warning. Lila gave him a spare key after I had specifically asked her not to. I came home one evening and found him on our couch, eating from a container I had bought for dinner. "Make yourself at home," I said. He grinned. "Already did." When I told Lila the key needed to come back, she said I was trying to isolate her from her family. "I'm not saying he can't visit," I told her. "I'm saying he can't walk into our house whenever he wants." "You're acting like I invited a stranger into our lives." "No, I'm acting like our house isn't a drop-in center for your brother." That line followed me for years. At the next family dinner, Derek raised his glass and said, "Careful, everybody. Brian's running a drop-in center now. There may be forms." People laughed. I looked at Lila. She looked down at her plate, smiling. Later, in the car, she said, "You could have laughed. You make things awkward when you sit there looking angry." I wasn't angry. I was embarrassed. Your face doesn't know the difference. There was one argument Lila kept in her pocket for whenever she needed to end a discussion. It happened about 3 years into our marriage. I had discovered another transfer to Derek after Lila had promised we would discuss any future loans. She told me I was controlling. I told her she was lying. We went in circles for almost an hour. I raised my voice. When I left the room, I slammed the bedroom door. It was wrong. I apologized that night and again the next morning. I replaced the loose hinge even though the door itself was fine. I told her I would not do it again. I never did. Lila never let the moment end. Anytime I pushed too hard for an answer, she said, "This is starting to feel like that night." If I disagreed with her in front of someone, she went quiet and later told them I had a temper. If I asked why Derek had access to our money, our house, or our plans, she said she couldn't talk while I was in that state. Sometimes my state was standing in the kitchen with my hands in my pockets. I knew she was rewriting me, but I thought the answer was to become calmer. I chose my words carefully. I waited before replying to texts. I apologized for my tone, even when the facts were on my side. It did not make her more honest. It only made the rewriting easier. The incident that finally broke through my denial started with an email notice. I was eating lunch when my phone buzzed with a notification about an overdue balance on a service account I did not recognize. The amount was not huge, but the account was under my information, and the missed payments had already caused trouble. At first, I assumed it was a clerical mistake. I called the company. I wrote down the representative's name, the time, and the confirmation number. The mailing contact on the account was not mine, but I recognized it. It was Derek's. I sat in my car for 10 minutes after the call, staring at the notes. There were several ways he could have gotten the information he used. He had been in our house alone more than once. He had handled mail when Lila asked him to bring it inside. He had also filled out paperwork beside me during a family trip years earlier. I did not know exactly how he had done it. I knew he had done it. I called him once. He sent me to voicemail. Then I texted, "I need you to call me about an account opened using my information." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, he wrote, "It's not a big deal. I was going to handle it." I took a screenshot with the timestamp visible. I wrote back, "Call me." He called 6 minutes later and opened with a laugh. "Man, you make everything sound criminal. You used my information. I needed the service. Mine had an issue. So you used mine. I knew you'd get dramatic. That's why I didn't ask. How much do you owe?" "I don't know. A few hundred maybe. The company says it's more." Then they added fees. "That's on them." "No, Derek. It's on you." He made a long, exaggerated sigh. "You got it fixed, didn't you?" "Not yet. But you will. Harmless mistakes don't use someone else's information." He went quiet for a second. Then his voice changed. "You always wanted a reason to hate me. I don't need to hate you to report what you did." That got his attention. "Report it? To who?" "Start with the company. Then whoever they tell me to contact." "Are you serious?" "Completely." He hung up. Lila called less than 3 minutes later. Not texted. Called. That told me everything I needed to know about how quickly Derek ran to her. "What did you say to him?" she asked. "I told him to repay the balance and correct the account." "He's shaking." "Derek is not shaking. You threatened to report him." I told him the truth. It was a mistake. He admitted he didn't ask because he knew I would say no. Because you always say no to him. That doesn't turn my personal information into family property. Her breathing changed. She was trying to keep her public voice in place, even though no one else was there. "You are humiliating my family over a small bill. Your brother opened something in my name. And you fixed it." "No. I found it. You know what I mean." "I actually don't." She hung up on me. That evening, she was sitting at the dining table when I got home. The overhead light was off. Her phone was face down beside her, and there was a mug of cold tea near her elbow. "You scared Derek today," she said. I set my keys on the counter. "Did you know about the account?" "That's not the point." "It is the only point." He told me after. "After I found it?" She looked away. "After he opened it?" "He thought he could pay it before it became an issue." "So you knew?" "I knew he had made a mistake." "How long?" "Brian, please don't interrogate me." "How long?" She stood up so quickly the chair legs scraped the floor. "This is why people are afraid to tell you things." I almost laughed, but there was nothing funny about it. "Who was afraid of me, Lila?" She crossed her arms. "I am sometimes." The answer was too quick. Not emotional. Prepared. I felt something go cold in my chest. I kept my voice level. "Because I asked how long you knew your brother used my information?" "Because you get this look." "What look?" "That look right there." I walked to the kitchen and poured a glass of water. My hand was steady, but I could hear my pulse. "I'll ask once more," I said. "How long did you know?" She grabbed her phone. "I can't do this when you're like this." Then she left the room. The next morning, I called Grant. Grant had been my closest friend long enough to know when I was minimizing something. He listened without interrupting while I explained the account, the phone call, and Lila saying she was afraid of me. When I finished, he asked, "Do you have Derek's text?" "Yes." "Do you have the notice?" "Yes." "Do you have the call notes?" "Yes." "Good. That's all you have to say?" "No. I also have this. Stop trying to sound innocent. Start protecting yourself." I leaned back in my chair. "That sounds dramatic. So does someone opening an account in your name while your wife tells people you're unstable. I don't know that she's telling people. Grant was quiet for a moment. Brian, how many times has someone in her family repeated a private argument back to you? Too many. He continued. Facts age better than explanations. Save the notice. Save the text. Write down the dates. Don't edit anything. Don't send a 20-paragraph message. Don't threaten. Don't trade facts for a shouting match. I don't want to treat my marriage like a case file. You already aren't. They are. You're just the last one to notice. I hated hearing that. I called Maya next. My older sister had never liked Derek, and Lila said that made her biased. Maya said Derek made bias easy. I expected her to tell me to leave immediately. Instead, she asked one question. Did Lila use the word scared? Yes. Maya exhaled. What? I have voicemails from her. About what? About you. My stomach tightened. Maya explained that over the previous year, Lila had called her several times after arguments. In two of the messages, she described me as scary and not acting like himself. I remembered those arguments. One was about Derek taking our spare key again, and the other was about money transferred from our checking account. Maya had called me after both. Lila was in the background the first time, asking me to help carry a shelf upstairs. The second time, Lila and I ordered dinner and watched television together less than 2 hours after she left the voicemail. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. Because every time I tried, you defended her. I would have listened. No, you would have explained her. That hurt because it was true. Maya's voice softened. Brian, I'm not saying you never get angry. Everyone gets angry. I'm saying she describes your anger one way when she needs sympathy and treats you like you're completely safe when she needs something. I rubbed my forehead. I slammed a door once. 3 years ago. I shouldn't have. No, you shouldn't have. You apologized and stopped. That doesn't give her a lifetime license to build a character around it. I didn't answer. Maya said, You're confusing loyalty with volunteering to be hurt. 2 days later, Lila proposed the dinner. She walked into the living room carrying 2 mugs and handed me one. I set it on the coffee table without drinking. Derek wants to apologize, she said. Then he can call me. He thinks you'll record him. I haven't recorded him. That's not the point. It was always not the point when the point was inconvenient. She sat at the other end of the couch. Mom suggested dinner. Everyone can reset. Who is everyone? Mom. Derek. A few people who have been pulled into this. Pulled into what? Our conflict. Our conflict is that your brother used my information and you knew. Her face tightened. See? That's the tone I mean. I'm speaking normally. You sound like you're building a case. That was the second time someone had used that language. I looked at her for a long moment. Where is the dinner? I made a reservation for Friday. At a restaurant? Yes. Neutral ground. I should have said no. Every part of me wanted to. But another part still wanted to believe there was a version of the evening where Derek apologized, Lila admitted she had protected him, and we set real boundaries. One last clean chance. I'll come, I said. But I'm not apologizing for finding out. No one asked you to. Good. She reached for my hand. I let her hold it. Just come in calm, she said. Don't come in with that angry face. I pulled my hand back. I'll come calm. That night, I forwarded the account notice and Derek's text to a private email address only I controlled. I saved screenshots with timestamps. I downloaded the bank statements showing the transfers marked temporary help. I did not feel strategic. I felt embarrassed. There is a particular kind of shame in documenting people you love. It feels like admitting that trust is already dead, even while part of you is trying to revive it. The morning of the dinner, Lila texted me that she had canceled the restaurant. Home will feel more sincere, she wrote. I stared at the message. Who's home? I asked. Ours. Easier for Mom. That meant Lila controlled the room, the food, the timing, and the guest list. I called Grant. Don't go, he said. If I don't, she'll say I refused an apology. She'll say something either way. I want to hear what Derek says. Grant sighed. Then remember, if they want a scene, don't give them one. I placed my phone on the charger before the guests arrived. I cleared enough storage to record audio if I needed to, but I did not start anything yet. I was not interested in secretly building a movie. I wanted a record only if the night turned into what Grant suspected. Lila spent the afternoon moving through the house with an energy that did not match reconciliation. She changed the table setting twice. She checked the front window every few minutes. She made a separate drink and put it in the refrigerator with a small folded napkin under it. When I asked why mine was separate, she did not turn around. It's something to help you relax. I didn't ask for anything. It's just a drink, Brian. Then I'll have what everyone else is having. She shut the refrigerator door. Please don't start. I asked for the same drink. You always look for a problem. I let it go. At 5:14, the doorbell camera notified both our phones that someone had arrived. It was Derek. The dinner was not supposed to start until 6 o'clock. On the clip, he stood on the porch wearing a button-down shirt he usually saved for dates and family photos. He had his phone in one hand and a small dark pouch in the other. When Lila opened the door, he held the pouch up between them. She glanced over her shoulder before letting him in. I watched the clip twice. Then I saved it. Derek came into the kitchen smiling like nothing had happened. Big night, he said. For an apology? He opened the refrigerator without asking. Don't be tense. I'm not. Your face is. The line sounded rehearsed because it was one Lila used. He took out a bottle of water, leaned against the counter, and looked me over. You going to make me sign something? I'm expecting you to apologize and repay the account. He laughed. Lila walked in carrying folded napkins. Derek, don't. What? I'm trying to lighten the mood. No, I said. You're trying to see how much you can say before I react. His smile widened. There he is. I looked at Lila. She was watching me, not him. At 5:40, Ruth arrived. She kissed Lila on the cheek, hugged Derek, then gave me a careful one-armed hug like I had a loose pin somewhere. Let's keep this peaceful tonight, she said before taking off her coat. Peaceful is easy when the truth is allowed in the room. Her mouth tightened. Brian, that's exactly what I mean. What do you mean? Let's not turn every sentence into another fight. I had spoken twice. By 6 o'clock, there were 6 other people in the house, 2 relatives and 4 longtime family friends. I won't name them because most of them had no idea what they were walking into. They had been told Derek wanted to apologize and Lila needed emotional support because I could be difficult when confronted. I learned that later. At the time, I only noticed the way conversations stopped for half a second when I entered the room. One friend asked if I had had a stressful week. A relative told me marriage was about grace. Another person squeezed Lila's shoulder and whispered, "You've got this." No one asked me what had happened with the account. Derek's phone was propped horizontally against a water glass before we sat down. The camera faced my chair. I nodded toward it. Watching something? He picked it up too quickly. Sports. The screen is dark. Battery saver. He set it back down, this time angled slightly lower. Lila came from the kitchen carrying glasses on a tray. Everyone received the same pale drink in matching tumblers. Mine came in a different cup. She placed it beside my plate with both hands. I made this one for you, she said sweetly. Maybe it'll help you relax before you start another interrogation. A few people laughed uncertainly. Derek looked directly at the cup. Not at me. At the cup. That was the moment I stopped listening to Lila's tone and started watching her hands. She touched the rim with one finger, then pushed it closer. Try it. I'll wait until dinner. It'll get warm. I don't mind. Derek checked his phone. Lila went back to the kitchen. Ruth followed her to carry in food. I stood and said I would help. No, Lila said quickly. Sit. You're the guest of honor. Derek snorted. I walked to the kitchen anyway and picked up a serving bowl. Lila's phone was on the counter, face up. I did not touch it. The screen lit as I passed. A message preview appeared under Derek's name. Is he drinking it yet? I've got the camera ready. I stopped for less than a second, long enough to read it twice. Then the screen went dark. Lila turned from the stove and saw me looking in that direction. What? She asked. Where do you want this? Her eyes moved to the phone, then back to me. Table. I carried the bowl out. My legs felt strangely light, like I was walking too fast, even though I was moving slowly. For years, I had wondered whether I was being unfair, whether I was too sensitive about Derek, whether Lila's comments about my temper came from genuine fear, whether I had imagined the way people looked at me. That message answered all of it. The accusation existed before I had taken one sip, raised my voice, or even sat through dinner. They were waiting for something. I did not know what was in the cup. I did not know what they expected it to do. I only knew Lila had made it separately. Derek wanted to know whether I was drinking it, and his camera was ready before the apology had started. I wanted to pick up the glass and pour it into the sink. I wanted to read the message aloud. I wanted to grab Derek's phone and throw it across the room. Any of those reactions would have given them the scene they wanted. So I sat down. Under the table, I opened the camera on my phone and started recording the room from where it rested against my leg. I did not point it at anyone. I wanted the voices and the sequence of events. My hands were visible above the table. Lila took her seat beside me. "You okay?" she asked softly. "Fine. You look tense." "I'm waiting for the apology." Derek leaned back in his chair. "Here we go." Ruth folded her napkin. "Derek." "What?" "He wants his official statement." Lila touched my forearm. "Brian, can we eat first?" "Sure." The first 10 minutes were painfully ordinary. People passed food. Someone talked about a television show. Ruth asked whether anyone wanted more bread. My separate cup sat untouched. Every few minutes, Lila nudged it closer. "You haven't tried your drink." "I'm having water." "I made it for you." "I know." Derek kept glancing between the cup and his phone. Finally, Ruth set down her fork. "Maybe we should address why we're here." The room became still. Derek wiped his mouth and looked at me. "All right. I'm sorry you got stressed about the account." I waited. He lifted both hands. "That's it. You're sorry I got stressed?" "Yes." "Are you sorry you used my information?" He rolled his eyes. "Brian, don't do this." "What are you apologizing for?" "I made a mistake." "What mistake?" Lila leaned toward me. "Please don't make him perform." I looked at her. This dinner was his idea. Because he wanted peace. Derek smiled at the people across from him. "See what I deal with? Every word has to pass an inspection." One of the relatives shifted uncomfortably. Ruth said, "Brian, maybe accept the spirit of it." "The spirit of what?" "His apology. He hasn't apologized for anything he did." Lila's fingers tightened around her napkin. "Your voice is changing." It wasn't. I looked around the table. Everyone was waiting. Not for Derek to take responsibility. For me to become the person they had been promised. Derek picked up his phone and adjusted it against the water glass. Then he looked at my drink and grinned. "Careful, everybody. Brian might audit the ice cubes." A couple of people laughed. I reached for my water. As everyone began lifting glasses for the toast Lila had suddenly proposed, I moved the place settings to make room for the serving dish. The two cups shifted on the table. Mine ended up to the left, closer to Derek's place, while I kept the plain water in front of me. It was a small movement, maybe 6 inches. No one reacted. Lila said, "To family choosing peace." I raised my water. Derek grabbed the nearest cup without looking, still smiling at me over the rim. I did not tell him to drink. I did not encourage him. I also did not stop him. At that moment, I did not know whether the cup contained anything beyond whatever performance Lila and Derek had planned. Part of me thought the entire point might be the camera and their repeated comments about my anger. Part of me thought the drink was only another prop. Derek took several swallows. Lila was watching me. She did not notice which cup he had picked up. Dinner continued. Derek's apology never improved. He said he would look into the balance. He blamed the company for the fees. He said I had probably made the situation worse by calling too many people. I asked him one question at a time. "Did you use my information?" "Technically." "Did you ask me?" "No, because you'd say no." "Will you repay the balance?" I said I'll look at it. "Will you correct the account?" "You're already correcting it." Lila interrupted each time he began to sound bad. "Brian, you've made your point. Let's not pile on." He said he was sorry. "You don't need to punish him." I stayed calm. That seemed to make both of them more agitated. About 15 minutes after the toast, Derek stopped talking. He looked down at his hands. Then he looked at the cup. His grin disappeared. "Lila," he said. She was speaking to Ruth and did not hear him. "Lila." Something in his voice turned every head at the table. He pushed his chair back. The legs scraped hard against the floor. "What?" Lila asked. He stared at the cup, then at me. "What did you do?" "I didn't do anything." "You switched them." The room went quiet. Lila's face emptied. "What?" she asked. Derek pointed at the cup. "He switched them." I picked up my phone and stood. "I'm calling for help." Derek reached toward me. "Don't call anybody. That's not your decision anymore." "I'm fine." He did not look fine. I will not describe the details because I am not a medical professional, and at that point, none of us knew what was happening. What mattered was that he was frightened, his behavior had changed, and he was begging me not to involve anyone. I called emergency services. Lila jumped up. Brian, wait. I moved away from her and gave the dispatcher our address. Tell them it was an accident, Derek said. I looked directly at him. What was an accident? He stopped answering. Lila grabbed the edge of the table. What did you do to him? I didn't make either drink. You switched them. I moved a cup. You set him up. I kept the phone at my ear. I didn't make either drink. Her voice rose. See? This is what I mean. He's dangerous. That sentence landed differently now. Not like fear. Like a cue. I ended the call after the dispatcher told me help was on the way. Then I placed my phone on the counter where everyone could see it and said, "No one touch the cups." One relative started crying. A family friend moved toward Derek, then stopped when I repeated, "Please don't touch anything on the table." Ruth stood slowly. What is going on? I looked at Lila. She had gone pale, but her eyes were sharp. She was trying to decide which version of the evening could still be saved. I asked her, what exactly was supposed to happen to me tonight? Nothing. Then why did Derek text you asking whether I was drinking and saying his camera was ready? Her mouth opened. Derek swore under his breath. Ruth looked at the phone on the counter, then at Derek's phone propped against the glass. What text? She asked. Lila shook her head. He's twisting things. I saw the preview on your phone. I didn't touch it. The message said, "Is he drinking it yet? I've got the camera ready." That could mean anything. What did it mean? We knew you might make a scene. So you planned to record me before I spoke. For safety. Whose safety? Lila's eyes filled with tears. Please don't make me explain our marriage in front of everyone. You invited everyone into our marriage. A friend at the far end of the table said, Lila, did Derek send that message? Lila ignored her. I asked, what was in the cup you made for me? Nothing. Then why is Derek panicking? Because you did something. I didn't make either drink. You moved them on purpose. Why would that matter if there was nothing different about mine? She was breathing fast now. You weren't supposed to switch anything. The room went completely silent. Even Derek stopped talking. Ruth stared at her daughter. Lila, she said. Her voice had changed. Why would that matter? Lila looked around the table and seemed to realize what she had said. That's not what I meant. What did you mean? I asked. You always do this. You twist one sentence and build a whole story. No, I'm asking one question. Why wasn't I supposed to switch anything? I made that drink for you. Why? Because you were tense. What was in it? She wiped at her face. I was trying to help. Help me do what? Calm down. Before I had done anything. You were already angry. I was sitting at the table. You came in with an attitude. I live here. Ruth stepped between us, not to protect Lila from me, but to make Lila look at her. Answer the question, she said. It was the first time in 7 years I had heard Ruth demand an answer from one of her children instead of asking me to be more understanding. Lila looked at Derek. That was another mistake. Everyone saw it. Derek had both hands flat on the table now. His phone was still recording. I pointed to it. That camera was positioned before the apology started. Derek reached for the phone. Leave it, Ruth snapped. He froze. A relative near him said, I thought you were watching a game. Derek did not answer. The doorbell rang. Then came the knock and voices from outside. I opened the door for the responders. The next several minutes were noisy and confusing. They focused on Derek and asked everyone to step back. I told them there were 2 cups involved, that one had been prepared separately for me, and that Derek had consumed from it after the cups were moved. I did not guess what was in anything. I did not accuse anyone of a specific act. I told them exactly what I had seen and heard. An officer arrived soon after. He asked the same questions in a calmer room while the responders continued evaluating Derek. I showed him the account notice, Derek's text admitting he had used my information, and the doorbell clip from earlier that evening. The clip did not prove what was in the pouch. It proved Derek had arrived early and met privately with Lila before the dinner. I explained the message preview I had seen. Because I had not touched Lila's phone, I did not have a screenshot of it. But the message still existed unless one of them deleted it. Ruth heard me say that. She turned to Lila. Given the phone. Lila clutched it to her chest. No. Then show me. Mom, stop. Show me the message. This is private. Ruth laughed once, without humor. You invited half the family to watch your husband. Don't talk to me about private. One of Lila's friends moved closer. Lila, you told me tonight was so people could see what you deal with. Lila stared at her. The friend pulled out her own phone. You texted me before I came. Lila said, don't. The friend looked shaken, not triumphant. She read from the screen. After tonight, everyone will understand why I'm scared of him. You sent that at 4:12. Before I had argued with anyone. Before Derek had supposedly apologized. Before the separate cup was placed beside my plate. The officer asked to see the message. The friend handed him her phone willingly. Another relative whispered, "Oh my God." Lila started crying harder. I was scared he would explode when Derek apologized. Derek didn't apologize, I said. She turned on me. You wouldn't let him. He said he was sorry I got stressed. You were interrogating him. I asked whether he used my information. You knew what he meant. No. I knew what you needed him to mean. The officer asked us to stop arguing. I stopped. Lila kept talking. She said I had been angry for months. She brought up the door I had slammed 3 years earlier. She said I controlled money. She said I was isolating her from Derek. She said she had only wanted witnesses because she did not feel safe confronting me alone. Then Ruth asked, why did the camera need to be ready before he spoke? Lila had no answer. Derek was transported for evaluation. He continued insisting he did not want anyone called, then changed his story and said I had done something to the cup. The officer asked him whether he had prepared either drink. Derek said no. Then he said he had only helped. Then he refused to answer. Those contradictions did more for me than any speech could have. The officer documented the table, the cups, the messages available to him, and the statements from the people present. I received an incident number. I saved it immediately. By then, the dinner had collapsed into little groups. One relative left without saying goodbye. 2 friends apologized to me in the hallway, but their apologies sounded uncertain, as if they were still waiting for Lila to produce an explanation that made everything normal. I understood. For months, maybe longer, she had prepared them to see me one way. A single terrible evening did not instantly erase that, but it cracked the picture. Ruth sat at the table with both hands around an untouched glass. Brian, she said, did you know? Know what? That they planned this. Not until I saw the message. She looked at Lila. Lila was sitting on the couch now, wrapped in a blanket someone had brought her. Even then, she looked like the wounded person in the room. Ruth asked her, did you know about Derek's account before Brian found it? Lila closed her eyes. Mom, not now. Answer me. I knew he was behind. That isn't what I asked. Lila said nothing. Ruth's face changed. She had spent years believing her children were irresponsible, dramatic, and occasionally dishonest, but not malicious. I watched the exact moment that belief became impossible to maintain. I gave him money last month, Ruth said quietly. Derek had told her it was for rent. The service account balance, according to the notice, had grown during the same period. Ruth looked sick. I went upstairs and packed an overnight bag. I took clothes, a charger, copies of financial records, medication, and the small lockbox that held my personal documents. I did not clear drawers or take anything that could become another argument. Lila followed me to the bedroom. You're leaving me here after what you did? I kept folding a shirt. What I did? You knew that cup wasn't yours. It was made for me. You gave it to him. I moved the cups. He picked one up. You could have warned him. I didn't know what was in it. I still don't. You knew something was wrong. I knew you were lying. She stood in the doorway. Brian, please. I zipped the bag. Her voice became softer. This got out of control. No. It followed the control you planned. I wanted people there because you scare me. Then why serve me a separate drink and tell Derek to have the camera ready? I didn't tell him that. Your message is still on your phone. Her eyes flicked away. Give me a chance to explain. Not privately. This is our marriage. This marriage ended the second you decided I was easier to frame than respect. She flinched. For years, seeing her hurt would have made me soften the sentence. I would have added that I still loved her, that we could talk tomorrow, that I understood she had been under pressure. I said nothing else. I went downstairs. Maya was already on her way. I had texted her one word from the bedroom. Come. Grant called, but I let it go to voicemail because the officer was still there. He left a short message. Don't explain more than the facts. Get somewhere safe. Save everything. I booked a ride instead of driving. My hands were steady, but I knew I was too shaken to be behind the wheel. I saved the receipt. Before I left, I sent Lila one text while standing in the front hallway. I'm safe. I'm not discussing this privately anymore. Any further contact stays in writing. She read it immediately. Then she called me. I declined. She called again. I declined again. By the time the car arrived, I had 9 missed calls from her, 3 from Ruth, and 1 from an unknown number that I suspected was connected to Derek. Maya met me outside her building. She took the bag from my hand without asking and hugged me so hard my ribs hurt. Inside, she made coffee neither of us drank. I told her the story from the beginning. When I reached the part where Lila said I wasn't supposed to switch anything, Maya closed her eyes. She said that in front of everyone. Yes. And Derek's phone was recording? Yes. Maya sat back. She doesn't fear your anger. She fears your receipts. I slept for less than 2 hours. The next morning, Grant came over with breakfast and a legal pad. He did not ask how I felt until we had organized the facts. Account notice. Derek's admission by text. Bank transfers. Doorbell clip. Dinner invitation and the canceled restaurant reservation. My ride receipt. Incident number. Names of witnesses. The message Lila's friend had received before dinner. Maya's saved voicemails. My written boundary after leaving. Facts age better than explanations, Grant said again. This time I did not argue. I contacted an attorney that morning. I will not pretend the next steps were dramatic or satisfying in the way television makes them look. Most of it involved waiting on hold, forwarding records, changing passwords, freezing access where I was legally allowed to do so, and making sure new income went into an account Lila could not empty. I did not drain our joint account. I did not cancel her cards. I did not try to punish her financially. On my attorney's advice, I documented the balance, requested safeguards, and kept every transaction visible. That restraint mattered because the first thing Lila told several people was that I had abandoned her and taken all the money. The statement disproved her within a day. What the statement also showed was worse. In the weeks before the dinner, Lila had made several more small transfers to Derek. They were spread out and labeled with ordinary words: groceries, repair, temporary. There was also a scheduled transfer set for the morning after the dinner. It had not gone through because I had requested the bank's help before it processed. When I asked about it in writing, Lila replied, "That money was to make sure I was safe if you reacted badly." My attorney asked her attorney to explain why the transfer was directed to Derek instead of an account in Lila's name. No answer came. A family friend later sent me a screenshot of another message Lila had written before the dinner. After tonight, people will finally understand why I need him out of the house and why the money has to be protected. She had not written, "If he becomes dangerous." She had written, "After tonight." The conclusion had been scheduled. My role was only to supply the footage. The financial service involved in Derek's account opened an investigation after I filed a formal dispute. I gave them the messages and the confirmation numbers from my earlier calls. I also made the reports my attorney advised me to make. Derek sent me a long text claiming I was destroying his life over paperwork. Then he said Lila had told him it was fine. Then he said he had never used my information directly. I did not answer each version. I forwarded the message to my attorney. Ruth called me 3 days after the dinner. I did not pick up. I texted that she could leave a voicemail. Her message was 2 minutes long. She said Derek had been released after evaluation and had paperwork showing he needed follow-up care. She did not describe the medical details, and I did not ask. Then she apologized. Not the usual family apology that meant, "I'm sorry everyone is upset." She said, "I believed Lila because she was my daughter, and I defended Derek because I was ashamed of how many times I had already rescued him. I told you that you were overreacting when you were the only person reacting to what was actually happening. I listened twice. I saved it. Then I wrote back, 'Thank you for saying that. I am not discussing the evidence outside written channels.' She replied, 'I understand.' Ruth stopped paying Derek's bills. That consequence hurt him more than any public embarrassment. He had spent years treating her help like a permanent line of credit. When she closed it, he called relatives and said she had chosen me over her own son. Most of them did not give him money. Some still believed I had engineered the whole scene. One relative said that switching the cups proved I wanted Derek hurt. I understood why it looked that way. I also knew what I had actually done. I had seen a message confirming that a camera was ready and asking whether I was drinking a cup made separately for me. I had moved the cup away from myself. Derek had selected it while mocking me. The moment he showed distress, I called for help and preserved the scene. I did not celebrate what happened to him. I did not need to. His panic exposed the truth faster than any accusation I could have made. Lila left 23 voicemails during the first week. Most followed the same pattern. She started by crying. Then she said she loved me. Then she blamed Derek. Then she blamed me for attending the dinner while suspicious. Then she said everyone had misunderstood. Then she ended by asking when I was coming home. One message was only 9 seconds. I didn't think it would go this far. That was the closest she came to honesty. I replied in writing, "You planned the accusation. You don't get to complain about the consequences." After that, all communication went through email or attorneys. A week later, Lila requested a private meeting. She said she could explain the drink if I promised not to record her and did not bring Maya. I declined. She asked to meet in our house after dark because she felt safer without outside pressure. I declined again. My terms were simple: no private meetings with Derek, no undocumented financial discussions, no return to the house while the investigation was active, and no major decision without legal guidance. She called those terms controlling. I called them the cost of being lied about. When I returned to collect the rest of my belongings, Maya came with me. Ruth was there too. Lila had agreed in writing to the Time. The house looked almost exactly the same as it had before the dinner. The table had been cleaned. The extra chairs were gone. The folded napkin that had been under my separate drink was no longer in the refrigerator. For a second, the ordinary room made me doubt myself again. Then I saw the mark on the counter where Derek's phone had been propped against the water glass. Lila stood near the stairs with her arms crossed. "You brought an audience," she said. "I brought my sister. You never trusted me." Maya made a sound under her breath, but I touched her arm. I said, "I trusted you for years." Lila looked at Ruth. "Are you really going to stand there and let him take everything?" Ruth answered before I could. "He's taking his clothes and personal property. He took our marriage." "No," I said. "You used our marriage as evidence against me." Her face crumpled. I was scared. "Then tell me what was in the cup." She looked away. That was all I needed. I carried boxes to the car. Maya checked each room with me, so there would be no later claim that I had taken something I shouldn't have. Before I left, Lila followed me onto the porch. "Do you still love me?" It was the first question she had asked that did not sound planned. I answered honestly. "Part of me does." She stepped closer. "Then come home." "No." "Why?" "Because love doesn't make you safe." She began to cry. "I made one mistake." "No." "Derek made an account. You hid it. You told people I was unstable. You invited them to watch. You gave me a separate drink. You had a camera waiting. Then you blamed me when your plan went wrong. That's not one mistake. I didn't know he would drink it. You knew I was supposed to." She covered her mouth. Ruth turned away. I said, "I'm not asking you to confess to me. I'm done needing private truth from you." I left. The separation papers were filed soon after. The process was not clean. Lila continued telling some people that I had trapped her into saying the wrong words. Derek claimed the account was a misunderstanding. A few relatives stopped speaking to me because accepting the evidence would have forced them to admit how eagerly they had judged me. Others reached out quietly. One friend from the dinner wrote, "I came expecting you to be cruel. I realize now I never asked who told me that." That message stayed with me. Not because it repaired anything, but because it showed how easily a reputation can be built out of silence. Lila had spoken first and often. I had thought refusing to gossip made me honorable. In reality, I had left the entire story in her hands. I did not start a campaign against her. I did not post the recording or send evidence to everyone she knew. I gave information only where it mattered: the bank, the company, the officer, my attorney, and the people directly involved in the dinner. When someone asked what happened, I said, "There is an incident report and an ongoing financial dispute. I am not discussing rumors." That sentence frustrated Lila because it gave her nothing emotional to fight. Derek eventually agreed to a repayment arrangement connected to the account and the related costs. The formal consequences remained grounded, but they were real: lost family support, documented disputes, repayment demands, and people no longer accepting his jokes as explanations. Ruth did not cut off her children completely. She did something harder for her. She stopped rescuing them. When Derek asked for money, she said no. When Lila called me dangerous, Ruth asked for a specific example and a date. When Lila tried to turn the dinner into a story about my cup switch, Ruth asked why the cup had mattered in the first place. That question ended most conversations. Months later, Maya and I listened to the voicemail she had saved from before the dinner. In one, Lila said I had been scary all morning. The timestamp was 10:18 a.m. At 10:26 a.m., Lila texted me asking whether I could pick up her dry cleaning and bring home coffee. At 10:41 a.m., she sent a heart emoji because I said yes. Hearing those two versions of the same morning finally broke something loose in me. Not grief, exactly. The need to prove that the good moments had meant more than the bad ones. I had spent years believing patience was strength. Sometimes it is. Patience can keep a hard conversation from becoming a cruel one. It can give people room to admit mistakes. It can stop pride from making permanent decisions. But patience without boundaries becomes permission. Lila counted on me swallowing every insult privately. Derek counted on me fixing every problem quietly. Their family counted on me accepting blame because I was the person least likely to make a public scene. At the apology dinner, they built the room around that expectation. The guests had been prepared. The camera had been positioned. The story had already been written. All I had to do was react. I still regret that Derek drank from the cup. I do not regret refusing to drink it myself. I do not regret calling for help. I do not regret preserving the evidence or leaving the marriage. The last direct message I ever sent Lila was about the final property exchange. She replied, "I hope one day you understand what you threw away." I looked at the screen for a long time. Then I wrote, "I understand exactly what ended." I did not win my marriage back that night. I won my name back. If you like the stories, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.